I'm with criminal lawyer Edward Prustchi, and we're talking about pardons, and we're talking about the conservative government wanting to get tougher on crime. Let's talk about the most hardcore part of this. I mean, whether we want to get tougher on some guy who got caught with a joint in his pocket or something like that, I think that's a different debate. But on the real violent people, is there any reason any of them should ever get out?
Well, look, you've got to ask yourself, A, what's proportional? So what's a reasonable sentence for a person? And anyone can differ about that. But the other thing you've got to remember is the vast majority of these people are not getting life sentences. And you probably would agree with that, too. In other words,
No, not necessarily.
so you think that the first time somebody does a serious sexual assault, we throw them in jail for good and we keep them there.
Yeah, for a long, long time. Because some of them tend to get out and do it again, and I don't like that.
Well, if we look at our numbers, that's actually not the case, right?
Well, 1 in 5 or something like that?
If you look at the statistics, recidivism on violent offenses, and take murder, for example, the recidivism rate on murder is extremely low. It's very unlikely for somebody who commits a homicide to actually ever commit another homicide. Now, part of that is they're going to be in jail for a fairly lengthy period of time.
Until they get older and their testosterone level goes down, which is part of it.
You would think, right, that all these young gangsters who were constantly saying should be locked up, and these are youths in the ages of 17, 18, 19, who are getting convicted of manslaughter, second-degree murder, so they're out in their late 20s, maybe early 30s. You would think that if they had these incorrigible youth that couldn't possibly be rehabilitated, that as soon as they got out, they'd be shooting somebody again. That doesn't tend to be the case. I mean, there are people who are like that, but we've got to have a justice system that recognizes that for the vast majority of people who we imprison, they're getting out someday. And so the question is, what are we going to do while they're in jail to make sure that when they get out, we've got a better chance of actually dealing with these people within society? And that part of that means not creating a sentence that is so crushing that this person has no hope, is never going to get out, and when and if they do, all they are is angry at everybody and going to lash out again. That's what we're not very good at.
Okay, you're right. Most people, when they go to prison, they are going to come back out. You want them to come out better. But what's wrong with drawing a line and saying you take a human life, then you spend the rest of your life in prison? Why should they get out? The person's still dead.
Well, remember that more or less that's true, right? A life sentence in Canada is life. I mean, a person will be eligible for bail or parole, 25 years on a first-degree murder, a minimum 10 years on a second-degree murder, but the parole period lasts forever. So even if a person does get out of custody, they are under the thumb of our justice system for the rest of their lives. So if that person gets paroled after only 10 years, and that would be a little unusual in a second-degree murder scenario, but it's possible if the facts warrant it, they're still going to be reporting to a parole officer on a regular basis. If they violate those conditions, even on a relatively minor basis, they're looking at having their full life sentence reinstated. So it's not like we just release them and walk away.
Is everybody's due a defense, and you're innocent until proven guilty. And this adversarial system is important to our freedom and to our decent society. But does it ever bother you to defend some of these people?
The reality is it doesn't, and people find that hard to believe. I sleep very well at night, and I'll tell you why in very brief. I mean, there's so many reasons I could give, but one of the first things I tell people when I'm asked that question is that almost nobody who comes into my office is guilty of everything the police say they are guilty of. Our system is basically designed in a scenario in which police officers come in and lay everything under the sun, every charge they possibly could, and see what sticks.
Right.
So people come into the office and they may well be willing to say, you know what, I did something wrong. And I'm prepared to admit to that. I know that X, Y, and Z I shouldn't have done. But I'm telling you, I wasn't the guy who did A, B, C. And so a big part of my job is sorting through all of that mess and figuring out what's right and what isn't. And I'm also got no problem spending my time trying to keep the police honest, because if we don't have a system in which the police officers follow their rules, their own rules, then we've got a system that's completely and utterly useless. If the officers won't follow the law, why would you expect Joe Public on the street to do so?
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.